In my last video, I showed this music stand, which was one of the featured pieces in Williamsburg's working wood in the 18th century. And I showed a little bit about making this tripod base with its dovetails. In this video, I'd like to show how I made these fluted shapes in the column. And I've got a copy of the fluted column here, and then another copy without the flutes. And I'd like to show how I made those flutes in the turned and tapered column part. Now that that fluted section is a separate component and is shown here. And then I made a copy of that and closed up that center square hole shaft for the adjustment of height. And then over here I made another copy and I traced out one wedge of 12 sections. This is a circle that I made. I made this column with the default 12 sides, and then I drew these edges to the intersections of those sides and created this small wedge, 1/12 of the column. And that's all I want to work with at this time, is just one flute and 1/12 of the complete column. So I'll delete out the waist, and I'm using right to left wherever possible to help in the deletion process. And a few little pieces here to get rid of. All right, so we've got now 1/12 of the pie here making the column. And I don't need this face, but I do need that middle face. And I'll reverse the faces on the center face. That center face is on the red axis, by the way, and that helps in some of the actions. The axis of the column, of course, is on the blue axis right now, but because of the tapering, this axis out here is not on the blue axis. So you can see that gap from the blue axis over to the edge of the wedge. So to help with the following procedure, I'm going to actually rotate this plate, this wedge, so that the outside edge is actually on the blue axis. You'll see later why that works. So now I moved that over, rotated that over so that the outer edge is now on the blue axis. I can delete that edge, that line I drew on the blue axis. And the next step then is to create the profile shape of the flute. I know the end of the flute is 1/2 inch from the top, and then I want to curve out from that starting end point. Again, down here it's 1/2 inch up, and then 5/16 is what I'm using to make another line there. And then the flute is has a 5/32 radius. So I'll bring a guideline out 5/32, edit the group, and then draw a straight line on this edge, and with the arc tool I'll complete the end of the shape, and I watch for that cyan tangent color. And here's down at the bottom the same tangent color at the bottom end of the flute. Now I've got a good profile. I need to spin that profile with a follow me, and of course to spin that profile, I want to do this. I'm going to do an intersection later in the process. I'm going to scale this up by a factor of 10 to make sure I don't end up with some gaps in the faces. So here's our wedge shape with the profile at a scaled up size, and I need a path for the follow me. Draw a circle. Interestingly, this circle is on the blue axis, which is not square with the top surface. Remember, we rotated that top surface over. And I'll select the circle and use the follow me tool. Open up the edit the group and click, and that spins the profile 360 degrees, and I've got the shape of the flute, and it looks pretty clean at both ends, so I don't see any gaps, so I think that factor of 10 helped that. I'll delete the circle's not within the group, so that I'll have to delete that later. I'll intersect the selection now, and so I've cut through the outer faces of that wedge with the flute shape. I can do a right to left on the outer part of that flute, and that takes away a lot of waste, and this face can go, or this edge can go away. Delete that edge, and now we've got a flute inside of the wedge. I can reverse those faces. I've got an edge here in the middle that is unnecessary, so I'll use the control key with the eraser, smooth out that edge, and again, a little piece of it down here. I've got one flute out of the 12 that are needed. And it looks pretty clean at this point. And I can delete the follow me circle path. I would like at this point to rotate the wedge back to its original tapered condition, and that means bringing this edge and rotating it over to the blue axis. And I wait for the sign that says on blue axis and click. Now we've got our taper back and the wedge centered on the center of the column. The next step now is well, I don't need these faces anymore. So I'll erase them. And I need to multiply this by 12 to get all the flutes. I select the wedge, pick the rotate tool, and hit the control key for copy. And I copy over one wedge and then type in X11 to complete all the wedges. And now I can delete a lot of the extra lines and edges. Use the control key to smooth out these edges with the eraser. And down at the bottom we've got some extra edges that need to be smoothed out. Not sure I've got all those, but I can catch any later if needed. Well, here's some more up here. We're still at times 10 scale, so at this point we can downscale and pick the scale tool and the corner to corner, and 0.1, I type 0.1, and I've got back to the real size of the fluted column. Here's the result, and it looks pretty clean, and I can put that into the other column turnings and finish the job.